Friday afternoon, morning,
Hey,
evening, Saturday morning. I didn't think about that. Could people in Hawaii be watching us? Could we be in Hawaii right now?
I think we should be. I don't know if we can be, but we
I think
should be.
we should be. No, I think you could be. Not saying the word, but yes, we could be. Hey, thanks for joining us today. My name is Darren Pope. Over here to the right is Victor Farsick, and we are the co-host of a podcast called DevOps Paradox. And on Fridays, we do this DevOps Paradox live thing on YouTube. And the times got shifted. Almost said a different word. Shifted this week because I have meetings during our normal time, so I couldn't make it all happen. So for the people in the EU with us, it's end of day, so you should have something to drink right about now. It's probably been one of those weeks. Has it been one of those weeks in the EU?
Isn't every week one of those weeks?
Yeah, it is. And it's before lunchtime for me, so I've just finished a bunch of water, and I am completely liquefied at this point on a good point. So anyway, this week's podcast, we had a guest on. Essential Infrastructure as Code. We had Rosemary Wang on. She's the author of the new Manning Meep, same title, Essential Infrastructure as Code. And if you haven't listened to it yet, go take a listen to it. Go buy the book over on the Manning site. Use I don't have a code for that. Well, I don't have a lower third for it, but go use the code Pod Paradox, the number 2 and the number 0, Pod Paradox 20, and you'll save 40%. And in fact, it's not just on that book, but anytime you buy anything at Manning, use that code. You'll get 40% off. We don't get a kickback for it. That's just a code they gave us so they can track you and whatever.
Well said. That's the code they gave us so they can track you.
Yeah, well, they're tracking back that they bought it because they heard about it from us. So but the subtext to that is so they can track you. Anyway, I thought this was really good. Now, we did disclose it that Rosemary does work for HashiCorp, but she's doing this on her own time. And it's a very interesting conversation.
Oh, yeah.
So if you haven't checked it out yet, go take a listen to it this weekend in all your spare time. By the way, we did get a comment from one of our friends, JMM, Jean-Marc, in the podcast channel inside our Slack Workspace. And you'll see the links to the Slack Workspace a little bit later on. And he really liked the past couple of episodes. So I guess we're doing something right if JMM gave us the big thumbs up. Okay, so let's get into the news for the week. It's really heavy GitHub. GitHub had a few announcements this week that I think were pretty interesting. Now, we knew that this one was coming. They've had GitHub Packages. That's their answer to a binary repository for a while. But now you can actually save your images there. And in fact, I was watching Brett Fisher's replay from yesterday, from his show. And now he is publishing his images not only to Docker Hub, but also to GitHub's container registry.
I mean, with the uncertainty we have with Docker Hub, GitHub makes perfect sense. And strong candidate to become the de facto storage for open public images, let's say.
I think there's a strong possibility of that.
Very
To the
strong.
point, to the point, I'm probably going to be changing up all of my builds to start doing the same thing as Brett's doing. Ship it to both, and that way, in case something happens, at least it's available.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost you anything to ship to 2 places instead of 1.
No. And I think that's an interesting take on that is for people within a company. If you're only publishing your deployables to a single place, that's a single point of failure, right? You should probably be deploying to multiple places. That way, in case during your deploy timeframes, if your binary repo is offline, at least you've got another one to go to. Just seems to make sense.
And on top of that, GitHub is the de facto standard for everything public. Kind of for source code, for issues. And now it makes perfect sense. Okay, so if my source code is there, if my issues are there, and so on and so forth, why not images? I'm talking about public, right? Private is a slightly different story, but for public,
Yeah.
hey, it would make perfect sense for me to start doing the same.
So this is interesting. Homebrew now hosts all of their bottles on the container registry. Home Assistant, whatever that is, don't know, moved all their installations to container registry. And what does this last one say? Helm working on Tiller. Okay. So
the only thing I dislike about it, actually, the only thing that I like about Docker Hub is it's the default one in almost all container runtimes, right? So I don't need to specify the address. I can say, hey, Docker image pool bfr6/something. For everything else, including Docker Hub, I need to have the full address, right? I don't know, Docker Hub IO, whatever, /me/image name.
yeah,
I'm lazy. I need to type like 20 characters more.
yeah, that's okay. So this was the first thing. The container registry is now available. GA, I should say, because it's been out there for a little bit. But then they followed up with another item this week. The new GitHub issues. Now, I know we all love, and for all my friends at Atlassian, just go with me for just a second. We all love Jira. Or we all love to hate Jira. Take your pick, whichever one it is. I'm thankful for Jira because it filled a need. It was, and still is, reasonable, as long as it's set up correctly. That's not what today's show is going to be about.
I would say that Jira is most likely the best way to file issues. The problem is that people go crazy with Jira, and then I hate specific implementations of Jira in different companies, right? But it's a good piece of software. I mean, it just does exactly what I needed to do.
It's just one of those systems that people love to just sort of, punch on a little bit. But what was interesting here is new beta features and issues, project tables that are built like spreadsheets, custom fields, a keyboard-driven command palette, thumbs up, improved task list, and the last one. So it's really, to me, it's the first and last ones, issue forms. So now you can have a form. I like that. But the project tables I'm going to pull this up because I didn't do this later or earlier. Spinning. So you can look at it as a board, our normal Kanban board, right? Drag it and off it goes. But you flip it to a table, and now it's, for people that enjoy doing spreadsheets, table gives you the spreadsheet view. Hey, this is interesting.
All I can say is that about time. I'm negatively surprised that this came now and not like 3-4 years later, because GitHub issues are so convenient, but they're so bad. Kind of like they're as raw as it can get, right?
Yep.
And this is really awesome, because it doesn't make. I'm so focused on open source, and it doesn't make sense for open source project to use anything but GitHub issues, right? But they suck. So this is a good change.
Custom fields. So now you can add custom fields. The problem is that's going to go very wrong in many different ways. We know that. But at least now you have custom fields.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure whether it will go wrong, because what is happening right now is that people create, template so that when you create an issue in GitHub, you need to fill in all the fields inside of a big markdown field, right? Normally you get questions. how to reproduce this, how to do this, what is that, this and that, and so on and so forth. So people have been using field-like way to do that for a long time. It's just that those were not fields, but markdown template. So I suspect that people will translate the same markdown templates into fields now, which makes it more convenient.
And hopefully so. But I'm just saying, that's what I'm saying. It's not that the feature is bad, it's people use it incorrectly.
Yeah.
Issues wherever you look. And this is interesting. Issues can be viewed, created, and managed in your browser, terminal, or whatever. So this is interesting. GH issue status, and then you get the stack.
You know that I start drooling whenever I see something from a terminal, right?
I know. I know. And this, now we can actually edit on our phones. Next. I was hoping to see the one about the forms, and I didn't see any specific, and it is a beta right now, so you have to sign up for it. I was trying to see, here, let's look at this one. This is the one I didn't look at. Okay, that, project permissions, experience support for draft issues. That's interesting. Okay, so this will, this is the other one here. How does this coexist? So if you get into the beta, you'll see both the classic Kanban and the new beta projects side by side. Coexist through the summer with classics automatically updating to leverage the new features prior to GA. No migration tools available, both from existing. Okay, well, that makes sense. And for everybody that's running on-prem, GHE support follows our normal cadence of 1 to 2 quarters before we enable a functionality on premises. So if this goes GA this year, it'll probably be in GHE next year. Okay. Sounds good. So issues. Let's one more time. Are you ready? There it is. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
I really like, okay, so from a website perspective, if you notice when I scroll down, it looks like they type right as it comes into focus. They're doing some cool stuff here, I have to admit. So anyway, that is boards to tables. Very interesting. We were joking about this next one, about security, before we started today. This was on the Google security blog earlier this week. They made this announcement in February and primed it, but then this week they have support now for Go, Rust, Python, and DWF. So that it's expanding and including all these databases. And the thing we were joking about is if you say the word security, it's sort of like going back to 2007. If you said the word mobile, people were throwing money at you. Now if you say security, people are throwing money at you.
Both investors and customers.
Yeah.
So yeah, if one of you watching is having a startup, doesn't matter what you do, you need to say that it's about security.
It used to be other phrases, but now it's security. So the thing is, this isn't that exciting, at least from a news perspective, but the thing I thought was easy, or what I found exciting, was a simple vulnerability interchange schema. So that way, vulnerabilities are defined one way. This goes back to our common API, our common definitions, common schema. Schemas make a difference, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Knowing how something is defined from a data perspective helps you query it, do whatever else that you need to do. So I'm glad they've got this new schema defined, because now for these, the languages weren't anything for me. I'm still, because they cover Go, Cargo, Python, OSS Fuzz, which was already there, and then DWF. So these were the 4 new ones that are there. So hopefully they'll be adding in others. But new schemas. Again, you may be saying, yawn, I don't care. If you don't care about security right now, you will be probably within the next 6 months.
Yeah. Once it hits you.
Exactly. As
So
I'm saying,
are you planning? I mean, basically, what Darren is saying in between words is that he's planning something very nasty in half a year. Is that what you said?
I'm just saying it because what's going to happen is your boss is going to come to you. It's like, hey, we need to do this security thing.
Okay,
That's all.
that's
That's all that
better
I'm saying.
version. That's better version than what I imagined. I thought that you're having some sinister plan to attack everybody in half a year or something like that, and you're revealing it now in public.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. No. So this is interesting because now that we have a common schema, and they have a current schema, I'm sure it'll evolve over time. But I saw this from Netflix this morning. And they have open sourced a new project, I should say, called Netflix Data Explorer. And it gives you the ability to access data in Cassandra and Dynamite/Redis data stores. I was looking over this, I'm going, this isn't that interesting. And I got further down into it, and I was like, oh, multi-cluster access. Oh, I can have all my data, like quick click into all my data. I can schema design. I can explore data. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, exploring key value stores. That's never, like everybody just knows how to do that, right? That's simple.
You know, those databases have their UIs to do the same thing. What is interesting for me is that it goes across databases, multiple databases, clusters, whatsoever. That's the interesting part.
Exactly. Supporting binary. Okay, whatever. There's a query IDE. All this stuff. So again, if you're not using Redis or Cassandra, then you're saying again, yawn, who cares? But then I question, why aren't you using a key value store in some way, shape, or form? If you're only using relational databases for all of your data storage needs, that's probably not a great idea.
And you know, I can understand that for Cassandra, right? But Redis, almost everybody has Redis these days in some shape or form, in some capacity or form. But Redis is really everywhere, right?
It is. Or it feels like it is anyway. And, you know, it's, even for the laggards, a key value store, people will say, okay, a key value store, well, that means I just need a table with a key and a value in a relational database. It goes beyond that. That's the thing. So I think this is interesting. Now, if you go down this path, also there's a CLI, just in case you were wondering.
Oh, okay. Now I like it. Now I like it.
The other thing that was interesting was, what was I going to say? I lost it. Doesn't matter. Anyway, it is open sourced on GitHub. There's a link at the top. It takes you over here. It was just 7 days ago. So about this time last week, it was open source, but they did not actually post the post until yesterday or today. I think it was today. I've lost track now. All my days are running together. We've been saying that for over a year now, right? Anyway. So anyway, exploring data, whatever. I can't remember what I was going to say about it, but it was interesting. Now I've completely forgot. Okay, so with that being said, I thought there was one more thing that I thought was interesting. Internationalization built in. I thought this was cool, but for some people they don't care. But yeah, most people. It was something to do. I thought it had to do with Vue.js, but it was about how they built it. It's an Express app. They do talk about it here. Where is it? Right here. It's an Express app written in TypeScript, and the client's a SPA written in Vue. I guess if you're trying to figure out how to write an app, this might be a good reference one. Oh, I remember what I was going to say now. Netflix does kill off open source projects. Just because a project showed up doesn't mean it's still around. Like,
Which one did they kill?
they sunset a lot of them that ended up being rolled up into Spring.
Okay.
Hystrix was one of them, which was their feature toggle system. Or excuse me, it was the circuit breaker. It wasn't necessarily feature toggle. Even though you
Yeah,
could do it, but
circuit breaker,
it was a circuit
exactly.
breaker. And there were a handful of others that were around that time in the 2011, 2012 that were released in that ballpark that have been since been sunset. So
Yeah. And I suspect that those that are sunset are probably tools that they're not using themselves anymore.
right.
And if that's the case, then hey, it makes sense that they're not really paying people to maintain projects that they themselves are not using anymore. I mean, it would be almost silly that if they do.
Exactly.
But it's open source, so you cannot kill it, really. It's just about somebody else stepping up.
Right. In fact, I want to pull this up here real quick, see if I can find it. So it's GitHub/Netflix. So let's look at, let me see if it's still here or not. Hystrix. Yeah,
Yep.
so it was here. And
Last commit, November 2018.
team. Yeah. So you could use it. It's no longer in active development and it's currently in maintenance mode. And it's stable enough to meet the needs. I think this is a great line here. It's stable enough to meet all of the needs of Netflix for our existing applications. Right? That's a good line. If your company doesn't get to the point of, to that point, it's like, okay, it's good enough. This is the legacy conversations we've had a lot. Legacy is fine. If it's meeting the needs, do you need to keep updating it? The answer is no.
Exactly. And that frees you from moving to something else, which is basically their next sentence, right? Basically, the way I interpret this is that it is good enough as is for us, and we are for our new stuff, we are moving to other things. That's the second sentence, right?
Yeah. Which is fine. Then they moved over to resilience for J, for new internals. So if you're using Hystrix, okay, it's maintenance, but now let's say use this instead. So the one thing I did like about, I wonder if they still have it, if you can still see it or not this way. Now it used to be, they changed this, but during like 2012, 2013, it looked like a Netflix homepage. So they had like concurrency, and then they showed a bunch of titles. So there was like the typical Netflix movie panels, so you could see and so you could click. So it was the user experience was very cool. But anyway, let's not go down that sad path because I really enjoyed Hystrix. Okay. So a handful of tools this week that I thought that were interesting. Kube Survival, reducing Kubernetes costs by finding the cheapest machines that can run your workloads. Seems like a pretty good idea, right?
I did not get it. What it is.
So basically, you define what your applications are. So I got a microservice that needs a CPU and 1 gig of RAM.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got another microservice that I want to have 3 replicas on that's going to be 500 mil CPU and 2 gig of RAM.
Okay.
And you keep adding all these up for how many systems you want. So this DSL is very strange for me. But so basically,
enough.
I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm running in my cluster. And then it will say, oh, based on what you told me, your instance, your worker node sizes need to be a T3 medium. You need 11 of them, and it's going to run you about $340 a month.
Yeah, but that's kind of for Kubernetes clusters that are fairly static.
Correct.
In a way, right? Because that situation, whatever. So on a first look, I thought that this is okay. Let me put some of my applications and figure out what's cheapest for some of my applications, not the whole system. Now I'm understanding that this is about defining the requirements of the whole system. But then those requirements, how long will they last? Right?
Right.
A week or two or a month from now, you will be installing a new tool, or you will be scaling up your application or something, right?
Yep.
And then what do you do then? Kind of recalculate, recreate a new cluster. I mean, sounds a bit weird.
It could give you in this case, maybe you need to scale it up. Maybe you find out where is it? Maybe you find out, okay, my idea for this 502 should have really been 2 CPUs and 4 gig. Well, you just rerun this math, come up with whatever this sizing is, and then you go off and just create a new node group and migrate your workload over. You'd have downtime, probably. Even if downtime is that long, it's still downtime. We talked to Rosemary about that too. But it only works on AWS right now. No AKS or GKE, which makes sense. It doesn't have support for calculating cost of EBS storage. That's a big one to me. It's like, I need to have an idea, at least ballpark, because basic storage, even for those instances, I need that. But again, they don't have a way to enter it. But
it's kind of nice, but the thing is that there is a number of tools that calculate costs and potential savings and what's or not in AWS, AKS, whatever, right? And they do it on a provider level, not only Kubernetes node level, which is what this does, right? So I would be it almost feels like short-sighted if you're really looking only at Kubernetes, especially in AWS. Kind of like when you create a Kubernetes cluster, man, you're going to create 57 other resources for that cluster. And the costs are very hidden, right? They're not, I would say that even calculating the right node size is probably the least of my worries.
Right. Well, and again, this says this tool can help you optimize your Kubernetes compute cost. So they're very explicit here. It's just the compute cost.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
I mean, it's, for that, if it will give me at least a ballpark, okay, based on what you told me, you need T3 mediums, you need 11 of them, and it's going to cost you this much, then you can make at least an informed decision, because you might have thought, well, I can just use T2 or T3 nanos. I won't need anything else, right? And at least this would give you a starting point, if nothing else.
True. I was a bit more negative than I should be. It's a nice project.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. And it's got money bags. So next up was Digger. And this is, and I didn't pull up the GitHub page just sort of on purpose for a moment. It generates your infrastructure as code for AWS or GCP only at this point, with all the best practices out of the box. And you can do whatever. Now, again, this is YAML that is yet another YAML, yet another markup language. But anyway, I'm tossed on this one. Now, there is they have a service for it, okay, whatever, or a cloud-based version of it. So think Terraform Cloud, but beyond Terraform.
Is it using Terraform in the background?
It's using, so under the hood, it's generating Terraform under the hood.
Okay, so it kind of converts that YAML probably into Terraform HCL, something, yeah.
Right, with best practices.
Yeah. But it might be cool. I don't know. I'm very about any tool that is based on another tool, and basically what it does is tries to hide that tool. I mean, that's not bad. That's great. I just need to dig into it and see what is the advantage. I would definitely not jump from HCL to YAML that converts into HCL unless there is a clear benefit of that something. Which I'm not saying that this project doesn't have. I just need to check it out to see whether that's the case.
So the one that's interesting for me, since they only support currently AWS and GCP, is if I've defined this abstracted thing of whatever it is, I could either create it for AWS or GCP and in theory not touch this at all. So I generate it for AWS or I generate it for GCP.
Yeah.
This I mean, that could be, if you're going to do multi-cloud and I'm needing to run container, whatever that means, and it needs DynamoDB, well, okay, that's a little weird, but maybe Q. Hopefully what it's doing is using it's cloud aware when it generates the Terraform. It has to.
I mean, if this would kind of like have a same syntax for multiple clouds,
yeah,
sign me up immediately. Immediately. I just think that everybody failed to do that. There are so many differences between.
Yeah.
Basically, the only thing you can do is make it so generic. Like, I want a Kubernetes cluster without specifying almost anything else, right? Otherwise, as soon as you start specifying what you want that cluster to be, then you're entering into often considerable differences between how Kubernetes cluster works in, let's say, AWS and Azure.
Right. So this is always funny to see the periodic table of AWS.
Why are you depressing me, man? It's Friday. We should end it on a good note.
It's not. If we want to end on not a good note, we'll pull up the CNCF landscape. So, anyway, so it looks interesting. They show some Digger versus XYZ, Heroku and other PaaSes, Copilot, GCR, straight up against Terraform, CloudFormation, Pulumi. So it's a one layer above spanning infrastructure. So it's just one more level of abstraction.
Yeah.
So
I need to try it out. I'm very curious.
Okay. More work for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Kate's Purger. Hunt unused resources in Kubernetes. So this one I have not spent any time with other than just putting it on here. It works as a service, so basically nobody asks questions. What does the script do? It will find unused resources and show them in a nice format. Why do you need this? Well, if nothing's being used, but how do you determine that?
This is nice and helpful.
Okay, so you understand it, so why don't you talk about it a little bit more?
I mean, I'm guessing, I haven't used it yet, but basically it shows you which resources are unused, orphaned, if you want it, right? And it's useful. The thing I like is that if I guessed well from the description, it doesn't remove unused resources. It tells you which resources are unused.
Correct.
Which to some people that probably sounds like a missing feature. To me, it's actually a good thing, because Kubernetes has a mechanism to ensure that you don't have unused resources. So being able to list which are unused gives you opportunity to improve your Kubernetes definitions, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like a helper to improve in a way.
Yep. Yeah, this just what I've been scrolling through here is just basically you run the command, point it at, it is Python, and it goes through, it found secrets, it found config maps, it found PVCs. You know, if you've got wasted resources, then yeah. Or, especially with secrets, right? If a secret isn't being used, it should be removed, period.
Exactly.
We were talking about security earlier. This should happen, so.
I mean, what I would really like, I would pay somebody money if somebody would give me similar tool for AWS. I'm constantly hunting unused resources in AWS. I'm spending too much time on that. You
I thought
if you
there
create a
was one.
Kubernetes cluster, you delete the Kubernetes cluster, you will, and that Kubernetes cluster had an ingress controller. When you delete that Kubernetes cluster, you will be left with the load balancer hanging, completely unused. I'm using that as an example, right? You have many others. In AWS ends up accumulating unused resources easily. I mean, not only AWS, to be honest.
Well, I know, but I'm trying to get back in. There we go. It's
That's why I like, in Azure we have resource groups, and in Google
yes,
we have, what is the name? Projects, right?
projects. Yeah.
And I can say, okay, I'm going to put everything in that project or resource group. And
Yep.
when I want to delete it, I delete the project and resource group, and I'm finished.
Yep. And if it doesn't let you delete, there's something else going on that you
Yeah,
that you have to
exactly.
clean up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. That would be nice if that was enforced on the AWS side. That would be really nice.
Yeah, really nice.
Okay.
Actually, not only AWS. I'm often using DigitalOcean or Linode for demos, for my hobby
Yeah.
things, right?
Right.
Not for production. Not that there is anything wrong using it in production, or maybe there is, but separate subjects, right? And I always need to go and clean manually stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So we're moving on to, okay, number one. I saw this within a Slack workspace this week. But number two, this is the first time I had ever heard of Codeberg. Had you heard of Codeberg before?
No idea.
Okay, so I'm going to open a new tab before we dig into this. Codeberg, give your free project a free home. No tracking, your data is not for sale. Hosted in the EU, we welcome the world. So
Okay.
that's
So is
that's
it kind of like a GitHub something?
it is. I mean, if you take a look
Okay.
at it, it looks just like GitHub. I'd be
Ah,
curious what they're running under the hood, but
oh my, that's not GitHub. Okay.
it's not. This is Codeberg.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So no tracking, hosted in the EU for people that care about that. But this looks very, very GitHubish.
If you exclude it, it's blue, and the top bar, I think it's exactly the same.
Yeah. But anyway, okay, so let's get back to this. We were talking about cleaning up afterwards, but this is a different way of doing the cleanup. This allows you to clean up Kubernetes resources based on either a configured time to live or a configured expiry date. Now let's think about this for just a second. Let's say you spin up a demo application, and then you're going on vacation. And you forget to spin down before you leave. And you're on vacation, a typical EU vacation, you're on vacation for 12 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you've been spending that money the whole time. Whereas if you would have set up your process to put either a TTL, which wouldn't make sense, but in this case of, okay, hey, I'm running this, and I know you're doing this for a conference that you're doing, Victor, and the conference is over on the 27th, so you would set an expiry date of the 28th. Just because, right? Maybe you're doing some sort of class and you wanted to give people access to this system until then. Now it would go through, clean up all the namespaces and all the namespace resources.
That's actually really awesome. I didn't think about it. I was about to say I don't understand what's the point, but that's actually really awesome.
Yeah,
I already know people whom you need to tell about this in your company.
I actually heard about it from within the company.
Okay, nice.
So now whether or not anybody else saw it's a different conversation. But this is very, very cool that you can just define how you want. Let's see, I was looking for remove deployments, I'm trying to find one that has a namespace. Here we go. So delete all the resources within the temp namespace after 3 days. So this is probably a TTL of 3 days. But here's one: require foo and pod labels for all new deployments starting on April 2019. This is a great one. In fact, this has been out for a few years. So this means anytime something new is created, it requires a label. Otherwise, it's going to get killed off. So this is the use case, again, from a shared services perspective of, hey, I have my developers spinning up new environments, and unless they tag everything correctly, I'm going to just get rid of it. No questions asked. This is the policy.
I think it's awesome. But if everything goes as planned, in next week's video, you're going to see a better solution.
Ah, okay. I won't ask anything else.
You can ask, you will not get answers.
Yeah, that's fine. Because you don't have the answers yet?
No, I do. I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, it's you yourself. If you go to YouTube Studio, you can see it.
Oh, okay.
But that's because you have permissions to do so.
Access. Yeah. Okay. One last one here. Kubernetes event exporter. This actually came in from one of our people in the Slack workspace. And they said, hey, if you're looking for tools, this is one you might want to throw in there. This tool allows exporting the often missed Kubernetes events to various outputs so they can be used for observability. So basically, there's a lot of stuff that's just not exported. And this adds more of those kinds of things. Now, again,
so it's not that much. I think that kind of the word exporter is confusing me. This is alerts would be a better name for that. And if that's what it does, and it is, I think it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome.
Yep. So like in this case,
it solves a lot of problems. Like imagine a pipeline that ends up, imagine this. We have a GitOps type of deployment with Argo CD or Flux, right? And you want to run tests after it's fully up and running. The only way effectively how you can do that is by triggering an event when that application is up and running, fully up and running. Because it's a pull-based model, right? So you don't know when it started, but if you watch the events in Kubernetes, you know when it did something, and then you can trigger, I don't know, a pipeline that will run your tests. Very necessary.
Right. So in this example here, you can use namespaces labels on the related object to route some pod-related events to owners via Slack. So that's what this is. The final routing is a tree. So here's all the route. So if I find it in a pod deployment or replica set with a label of dev, and I found within those test namespace, or within the test namespace, anything I had test, it goes to critical event queues, whatever it is, right? I haven't tried it out. And it would send it off to the receiver, which in this case is Slack.
Nice.
So again, this is older. I mean, this is a few years old, but it's only at 0.1. They're following the Hashi naming convention or numbering convention.
Yeah.
9 days ago, though. So let's see. Sorry for the long update. And priority shifting caused delay. Let's see, though. I want to see how many... what their timeline is here. Let's do tags because that's a little easier to see. So they had a big gap from August of last year, and the first one came out in December of 2019. So
I think that I was looking at this project to use it in one of the projects a year ago, something like that. And it was very green at that time.
Yeah.
If I'm not mixing it up with something else.
Right.
And I'm really glad that they're back on being active.
Yep. And it looks like they are now using the packages. So there's the...
Oh, no, but that's Google, right?
This is... No.
GHCR.
Yeah. This is GitHub.
GitHub. Yeah, true.
So... and it's all from... it appears, based on what we just looked at here, it's from OpsGenie. So... A little self-serving, but that's fine. I'm down with that. Not in a bad way. Yeah, definitely ops genie. So very cool. Yep. Config file updated to reflect GitHub registry. Bingo. Okay, let's get into the videos for this week. First off was multi-tenant with capsule. Why?
Why multi-tenant or why capsule?
Yes.
A multi-tenant is important. I think that, and I believe that we're going to see more and more movement in that area, because now that everybody is getting more serious with Kubernetes, meaning that, especially mid to bigger size companies are increasing the workload of Kubernetes, there is a logical question about tenants, right? How do you manage tenants? And tenant can be each team in a company can be a tenant, right? Do you give them all a cluster that's expensive and hard to manage? Do you give them all a namespace that's limiting? Capsule might be a good solution because it allows tenants to create their own namespaces and to basically do most of the things that they would do as if it's their own cluster.
Isn't there another project that does the same thing? Or there's numerous probably, but there was another.
There
big
is
one.
vCluster.
vCluster. That's the one I'm thinking about.
Oh, that's Monday.
Ah. Well, there you go.
That's the one. That's the one that I was mentioning. The one about cleaning up TTL resources.
Yep.
I would do that with vCluster. Not necessarily. vCluster doesn't have the ability to remove itself. But if you want to have something that is temporary, like for a demo, workshop, whatever, you create a virtual cluster. You might still need a tool that you showed earlier, Darin, but at least hey, I removed that virtual cluster when I'm finished. Whether you do it yourself, whether you set up a tool that will remove it after a while or something else, that's a separate issue, right? But you can think of it as being equivalent to Google Project within a Kubernetes cluster, right?
Right. That makes sense. Okay. So we stole a little bit of thunder, but we'll see. Finally, Schema Hero. I was excited about this.
You were, meaning you're not anymore.
I still am. I've had other things happen, so that's the reason why I said was. What's interesting to me is this follows the same pattern as what Crossplane does. Right?
Yeah.
It's not that I need to have my database running inside of Kubernetes. I don't.
It doesn't have to be database in Kubernetes. Let's clarify that from the beginning. You don't need to. You need Kubernetes to use Schema Hero, but the database can be anywhere.
Correct. Which is the same as Crossplane.
Exactly.
Right? It's just tooling. Its runtime, if you will, is Kubernetes.
Correct. Exactly.
Which is a plus and minus. There are pluses and minuses to that. But if all you need is just a small, even K3D, K3S, that's all you need to run things like that, that becomes game-changing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't say that, using small K3S, I mean, yes, that can work, but it's more based on assumption. Both Schema Hero and Crossplane are based on assumption you do have Kubernetes. Doesn't matter whether you are using databases outside or inside Kubernetes or whatever, but you do have Kubernetes. Everybody has Kubernetes. Now, actually, everybody has Kubernetes is not true, right? But if you have Kubernetes, then, hey, running Schema Hero in your Kubernetes cluster is just yet another 100 megs of memory used, and that's about it, right? Kind of, why not? And I like one thing I like, apart from, I like the idea that, hey, if your application is running Kubernetes, not necessarily the database, but your application, you have manifests that define that application. And then those manifests are almost certainly today based on a variation of Kubernetes YAML. right? You have a deployment service, this and that. Why not treat database schema as part of that definition of what an application is? Makes perfect sense. And I like and also one thing that I really, really like is that you define always the end state. I don't know if you remember kind of in the past that we had those cases that maybe it's changed now, right? But I remember using tools in the past where I would need to define deltas. So I have a table defined, stored in Git or SVN, and then I need to, if I want to alter the table, I need to write some XML or SQL that alters the table. And then creating a new database from scratch based on thousands of, create table, alter table, delete table, alter table, delete table, column, etc., is very painful. This one basically defines only the end state. You don't have deltas. That's very cool.
Yeah, because creating those delta files were always a pain.
Yeah.
And this, based on the video, I haven't played with it yet. It seems to be just right.
Yeah, this is the end state. I like that idea in general, and not only with databases, but whatever. This is the state I want. It's not up to me to define how something should get to that state. I think that's the conceptually important thing. Doesn't matter whether the same applies to Terraform, right? I do not think about, hey, I need to add 3 more nodes to my cluster. No. I want that cluster to have 10 nodes. Whether there is 8 or 7 or 57, that's not my problem. I do not want to think about how to get to the end state. That's not human work anymore. So any tool that allows me to define the end state and is capable of figuring out how to converge the system into that state is a winner in my case. I mean, in my book, is that the expression, right?
Yep. In my head.
Like my shirt?
I was going to mention that. What is that? Is it a tree?
No, it's a hairy chest.
Oh, it's a hairy chest. Okay. It looked like a tree for a minute, and I was like, yeah, okay. Whatever. So coming out next week, we have an interview with somebody again coming out on Wednesday, and Victor has videos coming out next week. If you haven't joined the Slack workspace yet, you can see crawling down right below us, DevOpsParadox.com/Slack. That'll take you over, completely free to get into. Join up. There's 2 big channels you should always join, Hub and Podcast. Hub is sort of the general thing, just Hub. And then Podcast is Podcast. And we also do notifications there when we're doing these channels. We usually put, I think I'm putting those in Hub now. I think I got that finally squared away in my head. And is that where I put it? I don't even remember now. I think it's where I put it. And usually we schedule these on Thursday just so our Fridays can change out from underneath us a lot. So, but we normally shoot for 1 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. CET. This week we were a couple hours early. So, that's why it happens. Anything else big for the week? You're going away, or you're not going away for the weekend, but you already have 1 video done for next week. You've got another one to think about.
I almost went away for a week, not for a weekend.
Oh.
But it turned up that I'm probably starting a new job, and then you don't want to start a new job by going away. And then everybody, my whole family is going away, and I'm staying alone and lonely.
Oh, well. Sometimes you just have to do it.
Yep. I can have pizza and beer all day without anybody telling me that that's not good. And then I can have a chest like this.
I think that's my goal. That's probably a great way to end this. If you made it through that and you're still here, thank you, number 1. Number 2, go ahead and give us a thumbs up on the video if you will. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and click on the subscribe button. Ring the bell. You'll be notified anytime we're putting out new content. Normally the content for here is the live stream and the podcast on Wednesdays. Over on Victor's channel is where you can watch Victor's videos. We'll have a link to that Do I have a link to that somewhere? I don't remember if I do. If not, I'll make sure there's a link to it. And that's DevOps Toolkit by Victor Farsik. You changed the name recently. What is it? I'm looking at it right now.
I get bored, and then I come up with something stupid, and then I change it. And
Yeah, it's currently DevOps Toolkit by Victor Farsik. That's the name.
actually, yeah, now I remember because I saw in statistics that people were trying to find it by name and couldn't because it was not mentioned anywhere. So I changed the title.
Your name wasn't in it? Is that the reason why? Or
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't like saying anything. Hey, I'm starting everything. Hey, I'm Victor, kind of like.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it saves 5 seconds, which I'm getting ready to change some of my videos to do the same thing. Glad you said that. It reminds me. Okay. Anyway, thanks for joining us live here. If you're here with us live today, if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching the replay. We'll be back again next week, and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later. And guess what? I'm not ready to press the button yet, so now I am.